This is the second video on the series here for PHP development, and in this particular video I'm going to focus in on the Linux users, and I'm using Ubuntu 11.10, and we're going to go ahead and install the LAMP package, which is going to be the PhpMySQL and PHP on the Linux server. And then what we're going to also do is, to make it equivalent to what we did in lesson 1 for the Windows users, we're going to install PhpMyAdmin, which is going to be a graphical front end for our database, our MySQL database, as well as the Notepad I, so that we can start writing some code within PHP. So let's go ahead and begin by opening up a terminal, and I'll just go ahead and type in terminal. There we go. And what I need to do is, before you ever install LAMP server or any packages on Ubuntu, you should be doing an update. So I'm going to run, first thing I'm going to run sudo apt-get, and then we're going to do update. I'll have to type in the password for your root user, and it's going to go through an update for us here, and it will only take a minute or two for this to update. And after it updates, which you can see down here at the bottom, I'm back to my prompt. I'm going to go ahead now and type in sudo. We're going to do apt-get again. We're going to use the install option with the apt-get, and then what we're going to do is we're going to install lamp-server, and then use the caret, which is going to be the shift 6. And so what we're going to do is sudo apt-get install lamp-server, and that whole LAMP package is going to be there. It's going to read through the information, and let's see, it should ask us, there it is, it's going to ask us, do you want to continue? And I'm going to go ahead and hit yes. And if you notice what we're going to be doing here, we're going to be installing, and you can see it's the following new packages that will be installed: Apache 2, and then you can see here the MySQL and the PHP 5. And so we're going to be installing that whole package. I'm going to go ahead and hit yes, or Y, and just hit enter, and it's going to work through and install the package for us. And now after a few minutes, after it gathers most of the information, we're going to need to set up some passwords for MySQL, and so we'll get to that here when it loads up. It'll take a few minutes. You can see it's about 5 minutes, and a little over 5 minutes for this to download and install. And now after about 5 minutes, we've got ourselves a prompt here to type in a password for MySQL administrator user, which is going to be root. That's something to keep in mind when we have to connect to our database. The user that we have by default is going to be root as the login name. And I can set a password here. And since I'm not going to turn this into a production system, I'm going to use a really simple password. I'm just going to actually just use password here. And so my password, I usually do a capital P, the @ symbol, SSWORD, to make it a little bit more complicated, rather than just somebody typing in password. However, it's a very weak password, so I would not recommend using that password for a production system, but for educational purposes that serves to be a pretty good password to use, because it meets the complexity requirements of many different options that are out there for different software. So I'm going to use that as my password, and I'm going to go ahead now and hit enter, and it's going to go ahead and ask me to repeat the password, and I'll go ahead and hit OK. And that's going to run through now, and that's going to set my password for my MySQL database, and I'll let it finish here. Alright, and you can see that I'm back to the prompt now after a few more minutes. And so we've got the LAMP package set up. Now what I need to do is install PhpMyAdmin. So I'm going to go ahead and type in sudo apt-get install, and we're going to type PhpMyAdmin. And I'll go ahead and hit enter. It's going to read through the packages, and we're going to install the PhpMyAdmin now. So I just need to hit Y and hit enter, and it'll run through and install PhpMyAdmin. Now when we get to the wizard, do not get click happy here on this one, because we're going to need to make sure that we hit the space bar to select Apache 2 as my web server. So when that prompts up here, I'll show you what I mean. And so when we get to this point here, you'll see there's a red dash. It's in this Apache 2. It does not mean that it's selected. You have to hit the space bar, and you'll see when you hit the space bar here, I'll go ahead and do that, you can see that the asterisk appears in there. You need to make sure you pay attention to that, and the asterisk is in there. So that way it knows that it's using Apache 2 as my web server. After the asterisk is in there, I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And we're going to run through just another moment here before we get prompted again. And here we are with the first prompt. It says that it needs to have the database installed and configured. And I'm going to go ahead and leave this default so that I can configure the database for PhpAdmin automatically for us. And I'm just going to go ahead now and hit enter for the yes, and that will, now it's going to prompt us for the PhpMyAdmin password. So like we had to set up for the MySQL database, we set a password in that one. Now we need to set up that password so that my PhpMyAdmin can know how to communicate with it. So it says the password of the database is administrative user. We're going to go ahead and type in that password, which I had set previously, and then hit OK. And then it says please provide a password for PhpMyAdmin to register with the database server. If it's left blank, a random password will be generated. And so now this is for PhpMyAdmin to be able to log in through. And what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to go ahead and just leave them all the same so that I don't get confused, because too many passwords around might get a little confusing. So I'm going to use this capital P at SSWORD. And we're going to need to confirm that as well. And like I said, if this is a production server that you're setting up, then you do not want to use this as a password. You're going to want to use your own password. However, if this is just for educational purposes, then this doesn't hurt to have that. And now you can see that this has currently been set up. So now we've got 2 of the 3 packages installed. We've got our server turned into a LAMP server, where we've got Apache MySQL and PHP. We've got a graphical interface for the MySQL database with PhpMyAdmin. Now the last one here is going to be a little bit more tricky, and that's because Notepad ++ is going to be an exe designed for a Windows application, and so this is not natively designed to run here on Ubuntu. And so what we're going to need to do is install a Windows emulator. So I'm going to add one more package into this one. I need to have what's called Wine installed on my computer to run a Windows application on Linux. And so we're going to install that one now. I'm going to go ahead and type in sudo apt-get install and then just wine and hit enter. It's going to ask for the password here, so I'll type that in. And it's going to take a little bit for this to install. You can see that it's 127 megabytes is what my computer currently needs. So it's going to take a little bit of time for this one to download. I'll hit Y and enter here to install it. So expect to give it at least 15 to half an hour, 15 minutes to half an hour to install this. And we're going to be prompted here in just a moment when it does finish up. And so I'll come back to you when that happens. And after it gets to the installation part of it, it's going to ask you for the license agreement. So you're going to need to hit tab in order for you to hit OK. And you'll see that OK turns red. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK now. And we're going to accept the license agreement. So I'll use the left arrow on my keyboard and hit enter. And it's going to go ahead and finish the installation now. And after a few more minutes of packages being installed, you'll get back to the prompt where you see I've got here to the prompt. And now this provides us with an excellent opportunity for a restart. And so I'm going to type in the command sudo, and then since I'll do it just through the command line, we're going to go ahead and do a shutdown. And I'll do a -R for a restart instead. And that's going to restart all the packages that I have installed. And I've got one more task left, and that's to get this Notepad++ installed. So after the restart, we're going to go ahead and install Notepad++. So I'll go ahead and hit enter, and it's going to restart now. I got to type in the word now afterwards. There we go. Shutdown, -R, now. And now after my computer has restarted, we're going to go ahead and do the Notepad++ installation. And so what I'll need to do is go to Firefox here, and we're going to go ahead and go to Notepad++'s website to download it, similar to what I did in the lesson 1 for the Windows computer. So let's go ahead and go to Google, and I'm going to go ahead and type in Notepad. There we go, ++. You can see it's already coming up. So I'll choose notepad++.org, and we're going to go to the download page. And we're going to choose the Notepad++, the current version. I'm going to choose the installer package. So let's go ahead and save it. I'll choose OK. It will take just a moment for it to download. Alright, now that it says it's downloaded, I'm going to go ahead and right click. Actually, I'll show you where it downloaded to by default here if you're not familiar with Ubuntu. I'm going to go to the folder, and this is going to bring me to my home folder, and it went to the downloads folder here. You can see there it is installed. Now what I want to do is right click on it, choose open with, and we've got the option now for Wine Windows Program Loader. I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and it's going to go ahead and run the installation through a Windows emulator, which is called Wine. So we're going to have the same setup configuration we had through the lesson 1 with the Windows. And it's going to ask me for the language, so I'll hit OK for English. I'm going to go ahead and hit next. I'm going to go ahead and agree to the license agreement. You can see it's going to install it in a Windows file path, which is going to be part of my emulator for Wine. So So I'll go ahead and hit next. We're going to go ahead and leave everything default on this particular screen, and I do want to have a shortcut created so I know where this program is on my desktop. It's easy to find and use, so I'm going to go ahead and create the shortcut on the desktop and choose install. And when I finally get completed here, you're going to see I got the option to run Notepad++. I'll go ahead and hit finish. It should open it up. I'm going to go ahead and close this folder here. And there I go. I've got Notepad++ currently running in Linux. So I'm going to go ahead and close this now. And the rest of the video series is going to be focusing from the Windows platform itself. So I want to point out a couple things for you. On this Ubuntu machine, if I open up my folder here, and I'm going to navigate here to the file system, a folder called var, V-A-R, and we'll go ahead and double click that one. You can find there's where our www folder is. And this is where our default web server is going to be loaded from, the pages from my default web server. So I'm going to need to make a folder here. I'm going to go ahead and if you look here at the moment, I do not have permissions to create a new folder. And so there's a couple things that we're going to have to set up on the Linux that are a little bit different than the Windows. First off, I need to have a folder here that I can work with. And so if you're familiar with Linux, we're going to go ahead and open up a terminal. And I'm going to go ahead and use the sudo command to create this folder. And so here's the command. I'll type in sudo, and then we're going to go ahead and say mkdir for make a directory. And we're going to go ahead and space it, and then we're going to need to do a / for the root directory, the var folder, / then the www folder, / and then what I'm going to do is make a folder called lessons, and I'm going to use a capital L, and we'll type in lessons. And I'll go ahead and hit enter, and I'll type in my password, and that'll create that folder for us, and you can see it created here in the background. Now I also need to change the permissions on this particular folder so that the files that I save in this one here are going to be easy, and any user that I'm logged in as should be able to mess with or install or modify the files and folders that are in there. So I'm going to go ahead and change the permissions on that particular folder. I'll use chmod. In fact, I need to put the sudo command in there. Sudo, the change mod command, we'll type in 777, and I'll type in the after that / var / www / lessons, and I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and those permissions will be changed. Now within this particular folder I can now create new folders and new files, and so that's where we're going to be saving our folder or our lesson information in. I'm going to go ahead and close that and verify that I can save in there. I'll open up Notepad++ one more time. And we're going to go ahead and do File New. I'm going to go ahead and choose File, Save As, and we're going to save it in the var folder, the lessons folder that we just created, which was in our www folder. So I'm going to click on the /. I'm going to find the var folder, the www folder, and there's my lessons, and I'm going to go ahead and save it as page1.php. So that's the location I want to save it. I'll go ahead and hit save, and you can see that that page has now been saved to that location. Now let's also go ahead and double check our web browser to make sure that it's up and running. So I'm going to go ahead and close that now, and you can see Firefox is here. I'll go ahead and open up Firefox, and I'll type in localhost and hit enter, and you can see it works. This is the default page for Apache on a Linux computer. And so I'm going to go ahead and close that. There's one more thing that I want to modify. I'm going to go to my folder. I'm going to go to this var folder again. So I need to go to File System, var, www, and then what I want to do is I'm going to actually delete this index page, and this is the first page. And the reason for that is because from this point on it will list all my files rather than giving me the It Works page. So I need to go ahead and move that to the trash, and you can see I don't have the permissions for that, so I'm going to have to run it as the administrator, and I'll use the terminal again. And we'll go ahead and delete that, and I'll show you how to delete that page as well. We'll go ahead and type in sudo, and we're going to remove this file. So I'm going to do rm and then / var / www / and then this index.html. And I'll go ahead and hit enter and type in my password, and that's going to remove that file. So now when I view Firefox here, let's go and bring that back up. We're going to run the localhost. There we go. And hit enter. Let me refresh it, and now you can see that instead of it saying it works, it's going to be a list of all my folders and files that I'm going to be creating. So this is going to make it easy for us to click on our pages that we're working with here in PHP. So this concludes the video on setting up the LAMP server, the PHPMyAdmin, set of Wine and Notepad++, all here on Ubuntu Linux.